Good morning.
Can you explain this better way for Cyprus to exploit its gold reserves?
Yes, what I think is that gold sales are very dangerous, not because the amounts are so high, they only deal with about 400 million euros, but in a sense the credibility of central banks is at risk, shown by the struggle between Draghi, the National Central Bank in Cyprus, and the government. What I calculated is if you go for gold-backed bonds and you securitize part of the gold instead, you could raise 4 or 5 times the value of Cyprus' current total gold reserves, and this would amount to more than 2 billion euros of today's money. This is because you lower the probability of default of a country, you increase the recovery in the event of default, and the price of gold would increase if Cyprus would go or risk to go bankrupt. And this is an anti-cyclical hedge, and this is possible within the legal restrictions of the euro area because the euro system has its own objectives and functions, and one of it being contributing to the stability of the financial system, and the gold-backed bonds surely fulfill the public function.
Anskar, there's a big vote today, of course, in Germany. Do you think Angela Merkel will secure a majority backing in Parliament in the Bundestag for this Cyprus rescue?
I think so. I expect it really because also in the past 11 decisions of the Bundestag there was a broad majority on the rescue programs. There is a bail-in of foreign depositors, a huge bail-in, and this makes all the German taxpayers quite satisfied with this kind of solution, and being a big signal that not only taxpayers from the German perspective are held responsible for the euro area's fate.
It seems as if the Green Party, Anskar, will back her efforts, but what the Greens have been saying this week is Merkel should back efforts by the ECB, by the European Commission to speed up banking union. Can you clarify what's going on right now, especially comments by Schaeuble, because do you think he's stalling by saying that a proper banking union should require these time-consuming changes to the EU's treaties?
Yes, I cannot understand him really. This might be due to the elections coming up in September, that they would not like to make progress anymore, because for me the Cyprus example of the bail-in of depositors is the best example that the German resistance to the banking union is purely motivated by the fear that this would mean that the German taxpayer would indirectly have to underwrite the losses of banks in the euro area periphery. And what Cyprus events have shown clearly is that we lack a common resolution authority, because the ECB has de facto become the resolution authority, but this institution is not democratically accountable for everything what's going on. So we need really to create a real common resolution authority, and also the more general lesson is that the axiom is not valid anymore, that no bank should be allowed to become insolvent, and this all, and the revolt of the small savers, this all helps that we think of more benefits of the banking union.
The question is probably not if the Cyprus bailout will be approved, but rather if Ms. Merkel's coalition will muster the necessary majority, and I strongly assume they do, because there has been a clear pressure on the MPs to really vote for the coalition and for the Cypriot bailout package.
The word representative is always interesting when it comes to parliaments. Do they represent the interests of their voters, or are they representative of their views? How do you think the German people feel about this?
Well, the German people, first of all, don't really pay that much attention to the Cypriot question. If you take a look at the attention that's given to, for example, the quota on women in advisory boards, that is also discussed today, right now, in the Bundestag, and the attention the Cypriot deal gets, there's a huge disconnect. The elite media is reporting on this, but German people are astonishingly positive on the euro. A recent poll showed 2/3 of Germans still want to be in the euro. On the Cypriot deal in particular, The big question is, of course, financing the gap. As you've reported, the question is how can Cyprus finance the gap that has emerged since the negotiation has ended 3 weeks ago, and that will also be a question a lot of MP will table. In the last couple of weeks, you have seen a couple of MPs from the economic and conservative bloc asking how is this going to work, what are the conditions, can they meet the conditions, etc.
If there wasn't an election in September, would you expect more resistance to this bill?
Yes. I mean, clearly, nobody wants to give a present to the opposition by voting against the Chancellor. And the 21 votes that the coalition has as a majority would probably be breached, would have been probably breached without a vote in September looming. Plus, the SPD is just waiting for that opportunity, of course, because they will vote for the deal, as will the Greens.
You talk about the fact that it's the elite press that is covering the debate surrounding Cyprus and the EU at large. I read in your notes, though, an interesting little line suggesting that maybe just slowly, and you look at Bild for maybe evidence for this, there is an understanding of what is going on around the German economy in even places like France.
Yes. I mean, short-term, Ms. Merkel is going to be safe after this deal. The problematic countries, Ireland, Portugal, the vote and the Bundestag will also cover this. Greece and Cyprus will be off the table. She will have bought time until September 22. We don't expect that she has to go back to the Bundestag and ask for another bailout. But the medium and long-term problem are, of course, what financial markets call fish: France, Italy, Spain, and Holland, because these are key partners of Germany, and if these countries do not perform in terms of implementing necessary structural reforms, Germany will be in more trouble. Currently, our economy still holds up very well, but German voters slowly see the bigger problem of our surrounding partners.
What is your expectation? You study this, you talk to people in Berlin. What is your expectation about what the next coalition will look like? What color will it be?
Well, that's, of course, a $100 million question in Berlin. Several scenarios, including a grand coalition, and also possibly a red, green, and yellow coalition that talked about. I would strongly assume that Mrs. Merkel is going to be the next chancellor, and I also think that she's going to fare very well if there's not a major hiccup going to happen in the next couple of months. However, it's too early to speculate on the color of the next coalition. In any case, the commitment to Europe will be as strong as it has been right now, maybe even stronger, with the Social Democrats and Greens leaning much more towards an even quicker transfer union and debt mutualization. So from the perspective of the European periphery, the Berlin vote will not change Germany's commitment to the European project and the Eurozone.
How committed is Angela Merkel to Germany? What do you make of what are people saying a few days after the news broke that maybe she won't stand a full term?
Well, I think she's extremely committed to Germany. I don't know the background of this speculation. It might make sense to think about a predecessor earlier than Helmut Kohl did when he was Chancellor. That's a possible option, but I don't think that there's a fixed plan. I haven't heard of that yet. I know about the books that has been published on this, but this is also Berlin. Somebody needs to talk about something, and I'm very sure that Mrs. Merkel will not go out and comment on these speculations, but she will lay out a plan in a kind of calm way. She always does. For reporters and media, it's very unfortunate because she doesn't give much leeway or much reason to talk and speculate about her personal future.
Yeah, it's going to be a fascinating subject.
Is they read out the number, and we saw, what is it? We're talking about the German vote on Cyprus, of course. Yep. 487 for, 102 against, but then in a few hours' time we'll get the actual readings of who voted what, and they'll name.
And that's important. Why? Just tell us.
Well, it's important because we get to see see whether the Chancellor gets what's known as the Chancellor's majority. Could she have put this through the Bundestag on her own, just with supporters from the coalition? Because in the past, there have been people from the coalition who voted against bailouts, and so effectively nearly every bailout vote that's gone through the Bundestag has gone through with what would you call a grand coalition, with support from the SPD and also the Greens, who indicated they were going to support here, and it pretty much shows that they did pretty much come up and do exactly what they said they would.
Not moving the dial, John, much in the foreign exchange markets, but the news out of Washington has the potential to do that. We've seen Weidmann moving the market fairly aggressively over the last couple of days.
I think certainly currency wars were the buzzword running through the last G20 meeting back in February, but even then they didn't single out Japan for currency manipulation. I think it's pretty unlikely they will at this meeting as well. If you look at the recent comments from the Treasury Secretary Jack Lew, he said just yesterday, sure, we're watching Japan's policies pretty closely, but they're in accord with G20 agreements, so I think that's unlikely to change.
What seems to have come out of this meeting, though, thus far, to my mind, is that central bankers are, to use one of their words, flying blind. That must make the markets incredibly nervous.
I think it certainly seems that way. The suggestion of Jens Weidmann coming out, a rather conservative member or president of the Bundesbank, coming out and suggesting that there could even be a rate cut, was a bit of surprise, and you can see it reflected in euro-dollar yesterday, and certainly we're struggling to come off that.
I was speaking to Jose Vinales, who's the Director of Monetary Affairs and Capital Markets at the IMF yesterday, and he had a message for the ECB. He reckons that they should ease up on their collateral rules so that small and medium-sized enterprises, those loans can be presented to the ECB by banks, and the banks can actually get more for their buck and get money into those.
Well, Draghi's certainly talking about a 360 idea of thinking.